Hi guys, so in this video we're going to be discussing about the SQL Apply operator. And the SQL Apply operator is a powerful operator that we can use to apply some kind of query logic to each row in a table from a table. So what actually this operator does is basically it evaluates the left input first, and then for each of its rows for the right input, it applies a derived table query or a table function that you provide as the right input. So let's actually get back. We're gonna just have a look on the types of the SQL Apply operator. The first type you have here is the cross apply operator. So what cross apply operator is, it basically have the right and left inputs as basically the table sets. We got the table from the as the right input and the left input as well, and then we have elements from left table which can actually correlate to the right table expressions. So if you wanted to have a look on the correlation, you can have a link. You can see the link in the description, and you can check my other video about the correlated query, and that will give you an idea about how you can correlate between the two queries. And let's actually have a look at the example for better understanding. Now I've got the SQL Server running right here. So I've got the AdventureWorks 2012 database, and in the AdventureWorks 2012 database, you can also refer to my previous video. I also created a function that was basically a table value function. So if I go down in the programmability section, and in that section I have the functions here. So in the functions tab, if I expand the functions tab, I can actually see that there's a table valued functions, there's scale valued functions, and system functions and aggregate functions. So if I go ahead and expand the table valued functions, I can see that I have these functions created. So I'm just going to be using this function, but before that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell you what tables I'm going to be querying. So let's say we have basically a table with the name of select star from. In the human resources schema, we have a employee table, and then we have, so if I go ahead and execute this table, it actually has 290 rows. And then I have one more table which is basically the employee pay history table. So this is basically recording the pay history of the employees, and that's also in the human resources schema. That is actually have 316 rows in this table. So what this table does is basically it records the rate of the employee, the pay frequency of the employee. So if the employee rate is being changed, it actually stores that kind of change in this table with the pay frequency as well and the modified date. Now what I did in this function, if I go ahead and right click on this function, what I created before, that was the employee payment function. If I modify this function, then I can see that the function created was a table valued function because it returns a table. And you can also refer to my previous video and you can have a better understanding how we can create the table valued functions. So it returns a table, and what it actually does, it returns a result set as a result of a query basically. And that query was just returning a join of the two tables that I just specified earlier. So that was the human resources, the employee table, and human resources, the employee pay history table. So that was basically joining the two tables, and on the basis of basically there was an inner join. And what it was taking, basically, it was taking two parameters. That was the range 1 and range 2. That was the input parameters that function was taking. And that was basically using those parameters as a filter clause for the condition of their primary key, which is the business entity ID. So it actually, the query says that join the two tables, the human resources that employee and human resources that employee pay history table, on the condition that the business entity ID, that is the primary key of that table, should be in the range of the values supplied in the input parameters. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using this function, and first of all I'm going to show you how we can query this function basically, as it is a table value function. So basically we can just query this function as if it was a table basically. So I got a name of the function, which is basically select star from, and this is where I'm going to specify the name of the function. That was fn underscore employee payment. That was the name of the function. But hold on, I also have to give the parameters here as well. That was very important in the function, as it's actually a function, so I have to give both the ranges. So the first range I'm going to give it as, for example, 1. That's the starting range, and the second range it will be 10, for example. So what I'm interested in basically finding the employee payment, the employee pay history of the employees starting from their employee ID 1 and till the employee ID with employee ID 10. So if I go ahead and run this query, it will give me all the employees pay rates and the rates and their in the frequencies starting from 1 to 10. So what basically I'm gonna do now, so please note that the first table, the employee human resources, the employee table, that's the primary table, which basically has all the information of the employee, has 290 rows, whereas the second table, it's actually got human resources, the employee pay history table, has got 316 rows. So what I'm gonna do is basically I'm gonna have another query, and I'm gonna write a query which is basically, it says, so select star from human resources dot employee table. And what I'm gonna do is basically, for example, if I want to just join these tables and I want to just give some value which is coming in from the first table as a correlation and pass it on to the other table in the function. So for example, if I'm selecting, for example, let's say if I'm selecting, and let's call it an alias, let's specify an alias here. So if I'm actually selecting, for example, the business entity ID, and what else do I have to select? Just take the, for example, the job title. Alright, let's take it to the next line. Alright, so if I'm selecting both of these from the first table, and for example, I just want to give this thing as a parameter in the second table, and I want to give both the ranges, for example, the same, and I just want to go ahead and run this query. So what I want to do is basically I want to cross join the two tables, and I want to give the ranges from the first table as a correlation and give it to the other table, which is basically the right table. So take it from the left table and give it to the right table. And if I want to cross join it, I just want to go ahead and run this query. It will not return, it will not be executed. And the reason why it's not being executed is that the first query, which was basically the outer query, which is this query, was not executed, and the result set is not being generated, and therefore this value cannot be passed until this query is executed. So we have to execute this query first, the outer query first, and then we can only do the other query, which is the right query. So what if basically I can actually exactly, this is where the cross apply comes into place. I can exactly use this query with a little bit of manipulation, and I can just, this is where I can introduce the cross apply operator. So instead of using cross join, if I actually go ahead and use the cross apply operator, and it will be basically, I don't need to select star again. This is just the syntax, and this would basically run fine. So this, if I go ahead and run this query, this would be working fine. So let's just take some more details out of this query, and let's say I will give it an alias as well. So let's call this as employee payment, so EP. So if I wanted to select something from the other table as well, so let's say EP dot the pay frequency and EP dot, so let's say EP dot we'll say pay rate. All right. It's not coming up for some reason. So let's just execute this for now. And the reason why it's not coming up is because and that's just because I have actually missed the from keyword. So if I just specify the from keyword, and this should be alright. Yep, and so I just want to include the rate as well from EP. And let's go ahead and run this query. So here we go. We got the result set here, and now we have basically, we can see that some of the job titles are appearing more than once. So this is basically, it goes row by row actually. So for every query from the left query, it actually takes it and pass it on to the right expression. And the right expression actually it actually goes row by row and displays the result set. So for example, the chief executive officer has got only one change, but the senior tool designer, as you can see in the result set, has got 3 changes, and that is the reason it goes row by row. So that is the difference you can see here using the cross apply operator in SQL. So this is a really powerful operator, and the best part, and this and one of the thing about cross apply operator is that in the cross apply operator, if the query doesn't have if doesn't have a matching thing, and if that actually doesn't have for example, for the right expression doesn't have matching value for the left expression. So for some entity ID, you don't have the function doesn't return anything. So the left, for that thing, the left query, which is this query, will not return anything. So that is basically the cross apply. So we don't have anything which is basically not matching and returning any null here. So that is basically the cross apply operator. So that was all for the cross apply operator, and now we're just gonna move on to the other type of operator, to the other type of the apply operator.